Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the Hoops and Skybox WNBA cards of 1999 and of 2000. Now, when the WNBA was founded, they made a contract with Pinnacle to make cards for their fledgling league. And this was an interesting choice that they made. They didn't go with one of the traditional brands of the NBA. So it was a unique choice that they went with, and originally it was a good move, but unfortunately for both parties, Pinnacle folded after just a year and a half. So that meant that the WNBA was now basically kind of stranded. So they had the opportunity to get a new contract, and they could have gone with Donruss, they could have gone with Playoff, they could have gone with Edge, Pacific, they could have gone with another non-traditional basketball brand, but they ended up with Fleer Skybox in the end. And this actually worked out really well because since Fleer and Skybox had joined forces, that meant that they had a little bit of diversity in terms of what they could create, the number of brands they could create with a different kind of quality to them. And the diversity that both Fleer and Skybox were able to provide as a result made the sets feel a little bit broader, and that was a good thing. So Fleer decided to use their Ultra brand as their premium brand, and in order to have a premium brand, it's really good to have a base brand so that you don't corner your entire market in one particular type of card. And it also is helpful to have a base brand so that the premium brand feels a little bit stronger. So they went with the Hoops Skybox side of the company for their base brands. That's what I'm going to be looking at here. They also could have used one of their Fleer brands for that, and in 2001 they would, but for these 2 years, again, they started out with Hoops and then they went with Skybox. So for 1999, the Hoops brand was kind of a chunky design. I don't really know what they were going for with it. It's basically a cutout picture of the player with a detail behind enlarged and in a monochromatic appearance. And the contrast of these two doesn't really work too well. It's kind of an echo effect, but the background shot, it really gets kind of lost. And the fact that they have a white border with a fade, it kind of damages the opportunity for the cards. So it's a bold statement that doesn't really say much. And these cards are supposed to be the cheaper cards, and boy do they feel cheaper. I don't really feel that any of these cards stand well, and even if you put them in pages with a whole team, they just don't carry. But fortunately, the backs of the cards look really good. Here they actually do have a full solid white border, and then inside they have a black to team color fade. The whole background is very dark. It has really good portrait on the back, and it has a bunch of statistics that are very easy to read, and it's really good. It has some information written about the player. It has college stats, which is interesting. It has a single year stat and a career total stat, all combined together, so it has a lot of information. It looks really good. The card back to me is one of the, I wouldn't say one of the great card backs of all time, but for this era, this is one of the best card backs. And it's strange that the card back is so good even though the card front is pretty mediocre. But that's basically the card design for this particular set. So going from the Pinnacle designs to this was a big step down. Like I said, they did do Ultra cards at the same time, and they look a whole lot better than this. So it works as a good contrast, but as a set, these cards really didn't carry too well. And the set also has some subsets. In fact, the set starts off with playoff cards. Now, the playoff cards are basically the whole postseason, and they also have a portrait of Cynthia Cooper as card number 1. These cards have the same white border that fades into an image, but it's a lot thinner, so it reads a lot better. And most of the cards are action shots, so that helps a little bit. On the card backs, it has kind of a caramel box that fades to white. They did a lot of fading in these cards. And they had some write-ups in there, big logo. But the playoff cards didn't really make up for the design. Basically, the entire set, other than the card backs of the player cards, the whole set was not very well thought out. It's kind of designed more for kids than it is for avid collectors. The second subset follows the playoff cards, and these are the league leaders. And it's a pretty good number of league leaders that they have. This is a 4-portrait card, and each of the portraits has a different color. And this design, I do like the fact that they have 4 different league leaders on every single card front, because at this point the league was still kind of young, and so you were still getting used to who the great players were at different disciplines. So this card worked really well in that regard, but the big bold colors, it kind of damaged the opportunity for the card, especially because the colors were so much stronger than the portraits. So this is a card design that had potential, but it was lost. On the card back, it looks more like a trade card really than it does anything else. It's too overly done. and it fails to do anything at the same time. It's kind of weird. But the card set did also have not so much a subset, but more like a theme. It had a bunch of rookies that closed out the set. And these rookies actually on the card back are exactly the same as the player cards, so that part is good. On the card front, these are portraits of each player, but they have a backdrop that's a big colorful something. I really don't know what. It looks kind of plasticky, actually. And so they're portraits of each of the rookies, and they don't really stand out. They don't look very good. So it's a strange set because I want this card set to be really good, especially because of how Pinnacle had designed their cards. So it's kind of weird. But they did have a couple of insert sets, fortunately, and the insert sets actually turned out pretty well. The first insert set is the All WNBA set, and these cards, it's 10 cards, first team and the second team, so 5 cards and 5 cards. And these cards have a chromium finish behind the cutout picture of the player. In fact, all of the insert sets have a chromium finish on it. But for the first team cards, the chromium finish is in front of a card design that is all kind of purple. And then for the second team, it's kind of a red card back. The design doesn't really work too well, except for the fact that they have some holofoil text on it. And the holofoil text works beautifully with the chromium to balance it out to create a really strong and dynamic card. So while the card design is this close to failing, at the end of the day, it pulls it off and it looks really good. The card back is, it's not that big of a deal. It's a portrait at the top, it's a field of color on the bottom, and a fade between the two with some text. You know, it's a card back, it's just kind of back there. But these cards otherwise really do look good. The second insert set that they have is building blocks. And again, with a chromium finish, this is more of a lilac color, I guess. And it has a grid with some, it's kind of like math equation diagrams that are drawn on the grid, and then a cutout of the player on the front. These cards are okay. They're not as good as the previous ones. They do hold up pretty well, but they don't have a punch. They don't have a really strong statement that they make. So as far as an insert set goes, I would say they're slightly above average. The card backs are, unfortunately with the card backs, there's something good and there's something bad. The good part is they have just a little strip up at the top where the player shows up, and then there's kind of a paper tear and then the grid below, and the player, it's almost like she's peering over the top. So there's a cool quality that it has in that regard. But because the grid is now much stronger and the text is white, the text kind of gets lost in the grid and the diagrams in it. So it's a card that just started to become something, and then it's almost like they just forgot to continue to design it. So I can almost say I like it, almost. The third set, however, this insert set really carries the whole Hoops set. And in this particular case, it is Talk of the Town. So this is a picture of the player, a cutout of the player, against a picture that relates to whatever town she plays in. And with the chromium finish, it looks pretty cool. Unfortunately, the chromium image is usually almost overpowering the particular player on the front, and so it can be difficult to see the player until you move it just right to where the chromium actually lights up, and then the player stands out a little bit more. But it doesn't matter because it's a really beautiful card and it's covered with gold text. There are 3 lines of gold text, and the deep rich quality of the gold foil text with the chromium backing and the beautiful images that they have make these cards look beautiful, even though you really kind of can't see the player sometimes. The card back is, the card front is magnificent with this. But they did have one other insert, and this was their Skybox Autographics. And this is basically what Skybox Autographics were at this particular time. It is a picture of the player with a background that is kind of a gold finish, and they have the word Skybox Autographics across the front, and they have an autograph on it. That's pretty much it. It's a really well designed card though. These look nice, and when you turn them over, unlike most autographs which normally have like a disclaimer or a congratulations, this actually is a card. It actually has stats on the back, which is a neat little trick that they played where the card feels like it's actually supposed to be something. It's very rare that anybody did this with autograph cards, and so this autographics card really, it's very distinctive. And I love that quality about it. So that was what they did in 1999, which means they had a lot of room to improve for 2000. And with 2000, they decided to go over to the Skybox side of the fence with their Dominion set. And this was a good move that they made because not only were the card designs a little bit better, but they had a parallel for this entire set. And that is what really needed to carry these more basic cards. So the basic card design for Dominion is a bigger white border fading into an actual picture this time, not some artistic trick that they played. This card actually looks really good. Not great, but it looks really good. And they have some silver foil that's on the card, but the card, like I said, it's all about the parallel, which is a whole foil finish for the card. And the text, which was silver foil on the basic card, now goes to a gold foil, and they replace the silver foil emblem with a non-specialty foil. It's basically just black writing that says Dominion Extra, which of course is the parallel. But the card backs on these cards are a lot stronger than the card front, just like the previous year. Now, these card backs aren't as good as the previous year. They're a great idea, and they're actually well built. The idea is that you have a picture on one side and it fades into white on the other, and then you have text that crosses the entire fade. And on the white, the text is all black, but when you go over to the image, they have a white outline around all of the text so that the text doesn't disappear into the image. Conceptually, this is a really good design. Unfortunately, there's just a lot going on around in that transition, which makes it a little bit difficult to read. And the logo being right there and all of that doesn't really help either. So it's actually a good card design. It's not as great as the previous year, but it is still the strength of these cards. Now, they had two subsets, or more correctly, they had one subset, and they had a theme, basically. None of the rookies were done any different than the regular players. So the rookies were all basically just player cards. So the theme that they did was the expansion draft, which is that the fact that they added a couple of teams to the league, and when new teams are added to an established league, there is a draft of players that the existing teams basically put out as opportunities for the new team to pick up to get some veteran players. Normally this is like a salary dump. You're taking some players who have some value, but you need to clear out some financial room, or you've got some players coming up who are ready for a position, and so you want to give them an opportunity, and so you're able to get rid of the burden of certain contracts. And it's a really good opportunity for the expansion teams because now you get a solid team of players who really know what they're doing. So this is a theme because basically it's all a bunch of players in jerseys, but the jerseys don't match the new team. But the big thing is up at the top says expansion draft. These cards obviously have the foil parallel. There's no difference. It's just that those cards are there. But after that, there is an actual subset called the smooth moves. And for this particular subset, they go with a cutout of the player, and then they have kind of a hazy color background behind. And these are strong players in each team. The card backs look a lot like the card fronts. They're just horizontal. And they come as a parallel. But that's basically what the set was. Player cards and the smooth moves, and then they had a couple of expansion players in there. And the rookies look just like everybody else. They also had 3 insert sets and an autographics. So the first insert set was, no surprise, all WNBA again. This is again first team and second team, and the first team is almost a blue in this particular case, and then they have the red for the second team. But the big difference between the previous year and this year is they used a sparkly treatment for these cards. And it's contrasted with a big white box up on the top left. I don't know why it's there, but it actually works as a good counterbalance. But you don't really notice it because the sparkly quality of the background is so strong, and it doesn't really overpower the player herself, but you can hardly read the text on the card because of the sparkliness. And the card backs are insert card backs. They're what they are. Now, there are 3 insert sets, but there's also a group of tribute cards, and this is for Cynthia Cooper, who is basically coming to her retirement. And so it's 8 cards talking about Cynthia's career, and they're nice cards. They're all nice horizontal cards that do a good job of showing her career through the years, but nothing much to talk about. But to get back to the formal insert sets, then we have Girls Rock, and this is a 10-card set, and in this case, they're all die cut. So they have a big arc on the left side, and they have a couple of arcs in the design. They have the sparkly background again over the background with the player again not sparkly. The cards look really good. I really like these cards. I think they look better than the all WNBA cards. To me, these are definitely the cards of this set. This is kind of like the high water mark for the Skybox Dominion set. And then the last insert set is the Supreme Court set. This is 20 cards, so it's an unusually large set for these inserts. And this is on the front, it seems like it wants to be chromium or something like that. It's not, it's just a two-tone color back of a key, but then they have a foil kind of quality of the team logo and of the text Supreme Court heading back in a kind of a perspectival design behind the player. It's a lot of design, doesn't really do much. They're okay cards, they're not great cards, but they kind of hold up. But in this particular year, the autographics look really, really, really good. These autographics basically have a background to the player on either side with a big white box in the middle, and they have like a shadow behind the player, which is kind of strange. They kind of overly designed it. But the color treatment on the cards, the way that it's done in a very formal and elegant way, looks really good. And the fact that they have their autographics logo as kind of a red foil emblem up on the top right, it makes the card look fantastic. Now this card doesn't go with the stats on the back like in 1999. This year they basically go with more of a disclaimer, a congratulations, you got an autograph. But other than that, it's a really good card. So that was how this particular set closed out. So in both of these cases, the main card sets weren't all that great, but the insert sets were fantastic. Well, the insert sets were good to fantastic. So that's really what you want to collect with these cards. It was a nice contrast to Ultra. The Ultra cards weren't overly designed, they weren't overly impressive, but compared to these, they were a whole lot better. I actually happen to like what happened in 2001 with the base cards a lot better than these particular sets, but you know, they're okay. So after 2000, Fleer did decide to go with one of their Fleer brands, and then they would stop doing that and just stick with Ultra afterwards. I'll look at the Fleer brands at another time, and I'll look at Ultra at another time as well. But for these 2 years, this is what they had for the WNBA cards, and this is really what most people were collecting. They are fun to collect. They're fun to collect primarily because of the insert cards. It's nice to get rookies, obviously, and the parallels for the Dominion cards are always a lot of fun. But other than that, they're a bit under-designed, which is what it is. These were cheap cards, and they very much held up in that way. So let me know in the comments below what you think, if you think I'm a little bit hard on the cards, your take on these cards. If you like the video, I hope that you'll hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Ring the bell to be notified. Check out the other videos that I've done. And thank you very much for watching.